Hi everyone, Chad Parks here. Today we're going to be going over the brake bulkhead assembly. Thanks for watching. All right, here we are with our chassis. I've done some pre-assembly here with the transmission and the transmission brace, also the riser. So I'll bring you up to speed with what I've done so far. I've installed the supplied carbon fiber transmission riser under the suspension blocks, and I've also installed the supplied screws. And a couple things to note here. The screws that hold, well, I don't have those in, but we'll ignore that. The screws that I've supplied with the Ignite kit will replace the OE team associated screws. They're all 2 millimeters longer due to chassis thickness and this riser. And I've spec'd all the screw lengths on my website under the instructions and exploded views tab, I believe is what it's called. Also, I need to note that this riser is not an option part. This is required to run the kit. So you're not going to want to use that as a setup change or anything like that. It is required for spur gear clearance. So that's why I've used the transmission riser. Also, supplied with your kit in the washer bag is 2 3 by 1.5 millimeter black anodized washers, and those are going to replace your gear cover, the gear cover that Team Associated supplies. So that just brings everything into the correct plane when installing this transmission brace. Also, you're going to run the 2 supplied 3x8 button head screws into that servo mount. So that brings you up to speed on the transmission assembly, the transmission riser, transmission brace with the spacers, and we'll move on to the spur gear and slipper pads and things like that. So the slipper pads and spur gear, which are supplied in your kit, the slipper pads fit a little bit tight on that inner radius, at that inner diameter around the spur gear. So what you're going to do is press that in. That actually helps to kind of hold the slipper pad in place during assembly. So you're just going to want to run your finger around that diameter and get it pressed in just like that. Apparently this one's a little bit loose. We'll use that for the outer. These have been applied a few times. So we're going to install the OE Team Associated inner slipper plate. You're going to use the largest bearing that is included in your Ignite kit. It's going to be the spur gear bushing. And we'll throw those together. I did lose my slipper pad alignment there, but let's try again. You all know how this can be. There we go. And you're going to use your the Ignite outer slipper hub. And that keys in just like you would your normal kit. Nothing new as far as that goes. Everything should go together pretty much like your regular T6. Now on this slipper setting, I will tell you the slipper use is pretty critical on this. We've done some different pad testing and landed on this material to be to protect the transmission the best, and also provide the best power delivery. So I recommend starting with a slipper setting of flush. So you're going to run a nut flush with the end of the bolt, the slipper shaft. I'm not sure what we call that, but anyway, there it is for the spur gear, slipper, and transmission assembly. We'll move on to the brake bulkhead here. So here I've done some pre-assembly also. You're going to take the smallest bearing that's included in your kit and press it into the plastic upper mount and install 2 3x8 button head screws with Loctite to keep things from moving around. And then you slide your brake cam up from the bottom, install this 2x8 pin, as well as a set screw through this threaded hole to hold everything together. And that's that. Once you get that, you'll move on to your caliper installation. Now for this, I've included a steel washer that's going to go on that bottom hole, and it just helps to keep everything aligned and on the same plane. And also I wanted to note, I use Team Associated part number 81038 brake caliper springs. I would install them at this stage right now. They're not necessary to run this car. That's why I haven't included them in the kit, but they are optional, and they're kind of a nice touch for the way your brakes operate. So these fasten using the supplied 3x12 button head screws. Now on these screws, you're going to want to run some kind of Loctite. I've been using red, which is a semi-permanent thread locking adhesive, but these aren't something that you service often or will need to take off very often, if ever. So you definitely just don't want them to ever move on you. The worst thing you can have is your brakes to move during a race. So I'll start with those, with the bolts roughly flush with the outside of the bulkhead. And what we're looking for here, ultimately, is a 2.6 millimeter gap on these calipers. So you're going to just measure that in between 2.6 on the top screw vice versa, the bottom screw here, and 2.6 on this top screw. So that completes that. And while we're holding this, we'll insert our brake disc, and that'll help us install it onto the slipper hub and get everything aligned. So this bulkhead will fasten from the bottom with two supplied 3x8 flathead screws. And as I mentioned before, you definitely want Loctite on these. Blue is definitely sufficient, but if you're running a nitro car, you already know you need a Loctite metal parts. And that's the last step on our brake bulkhead setup and assembly. Hope this was helpful, and hope you enjoy running your kit. Thanks for watching.